Getting someone to see your point of view, getting them to agree with you, it can feel like you're bracing for a debate, can it?
Oh, absolutely.
Like you have to push or convince or even, argue your way there.
Right, like it's a battlefield sometimes, but maybe there's another way.
Exactly. What if there was something, I don't know, simpler, more gentle, maybe even ancient?
It's true. Our instinct is often to just jump on the disagreement, isn't it? Lay out our case, explain why we are right.
Yeah, but that often just builds walls, not bridges.
Definitely.
And that's why we're doing a deep dive today. We're digging into some really powerful material, specifically Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Chapter 14, actually.
Yeah, classic.
It explores this technique for influencing others that's kind of, well, it feels counterintuitive, but apparently it's incredibly effective.
So our mission here is to really unpack this technique Carnegie describes. We want to get into the psychology of why it works.
And look at the real-world examples he gives in the book. See it in action.
Exactly. It's all about finding a more effective, maybe less confrontational way to, navigate those conversations.
And the core idea, the thing that really jumps out, is the surprising power you get when you focus on agreement first.
Getting the other person to say just one simple word again and again.
Okay, so let's dive into that fundamental principle Carnegie lays out.
Right. He basically says, look, when you're talking to people, don't start with the stuff you disagree on. That's the worst way to begin. Instead, you should immediately emphasize and keep stressing the things you do agree on. Find that common ground right away.
It really struck me how he points out that often you and the other person aren't even fighting for different things. You might both want the same outcome, right?
Yeah, exactly. The goal is often the same. It's just the method, the path to get there that differs.
Okay, and this principle leads straight to the specific technique he really pushes for.
Which is getting the other person saying, yes, yes, right from the get-go.
From the very start.
Yeah. Carnegie says getting a no response right at the beginning is a huge handicap. It's incredibly difficult to turn that around later.
But why? What's so bad about hearing no? What's the psychology there?
Well, it's fascinating. He describes the reaction to no as the entire organism kind of gathering itself for rejection.
Wow. The whole organism.
Yeah, he talks about a physical withdrawal even. The neuromuscular system goes on guard against acceptance. It's like your body and mind are literally preparing to resist.
So it's not just I disagree, it's a physical bracing.
That's the idea. And then, once someone has actually said no, this thing he calls pride of personality kicks in.
Okay, consistency.
Right. You feel this need to stick to your guns, to be consistent with what you just said. Even if you start to think maybe no wasn't quite right, it's really hard to backtrack because of that pride. You've planted your flag, so to speak.
Okay, so no puts up all the defenses.
Yeah.
What about yes? What happens then?
It's the complete opposite. Carnegie says when someone says yes, none of that withdrawal happens. The organism is in a forward-moving state. It's accepting, open.
More receptive.
Exactly. It creates that receptiveness you need.
He uses that analogy, the billiard ball one. I thought that was really clear.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one.
If you hit a ball in one direction, say the yes direction, it takes some force to push it off course.
Sure.
But it takes way more force to make it go back in the completely opposite direction, the no direction.
That forward momentum towards yes is just really powerful. Once you get it going, reversing it takes a lot of effort from the other person.
What's kind of depressing reading this is how simple it seems. Like, this isn't rocket science.
No, it's not.
Yet we miss it all the time. Carnegie even notes it's like some people get a kick out of, starting a fight right away. It makes them feel important or something.
Yeah, picking that fight, antagonizing people, and trying to pull someone back from that defensive, bristling, negative state once they've dug in with a no.
It's tough.
He says it requires the wisdom and patience of angels. It's a serious uphill battle if you start off on the wrong foot.
Okay, so we get the principle, we get the psychology. How does this actually work in, real life? Carnegie gives some great examples. Let's start with the bank teller, James Eberson.
Right, Eberson. So he had this customer trying to open an account, but the guy just flat out refused to answer some standard questions on the form.
Common problem, probably.
Yeah. And Eberson reflected that, before learning this principle, his old approach would have been totally different.
How so?
He probably would just laid down the law, stated the bank's policy, given an ultimatum, maybe even said, sorry, can't open the account if you don't answer.
Showing who was boss. as he put it.
Exactly. And he admits, yeah, that might make him feel good for a second, proving the rules matter. But it totally alienates the customer, sends them walking.
So this time he tried the yes, yes approach instead.
Right. He consciously decided not to focus on what the bank needed, but what the customer might want or need. And the key was getting that initial yes.
How do you do that?
He actually started by agreeing with the customer, which is crucial. He said something like, well, that information you're hesitant about, it isn't absolutely necessary right now.
Okay. Validating their pushback first.
Yeah.
Smart. Then what?
Then he shifted the focus. He pivoted to the customer's own potential future benefit. He asked, however, and this is key, suppose you have money in this bank at your death. Wouldn't you like, he asked, to have the bank transfer it to your next of kin?
Appealing to their self-interest.
Exactly. Who is entitled to it according to law?
And the customer's response?
Yes, of course, he replied. Bang, first, yes.
Okay.
So building on that, Aberson followed up smoothly. Don't you think? It would be a good idea to give us the name of your next of kin so that we could carry out your wishes without error or delay.
Leading them gently, and the customer
said yes again. Carnegie points out the guy's whole attitude just softened right up. He realized the questions weren't just some bureaucratic hurdle. They were actually for his benefit, his protection.
That shift from resistance to cooperation is pretty amazing. What was the final outcome?
Well, the customer didn't just answer those few questions. He ended up giving all the information, opened a trust account, named his mother as beneficiary, and was apparently happy to answer questions about her too.
Wow.
He completely forgot the initial conflict. And Eberson's quote sums it up. By getting him to say yes, yes from the outset, he forgot the issue at stake and was happy to do all the things I suggested.
That really nails it. Shifting the frame from bank rules to customer benefit, leading with agreement. Powerful stuff.
It really is. It's not about manipulation. It's about finding that shared goal and framing things that way.
Okay, let's look at the second example, the sales one.
Yeah.
Joseph Allison, selling for Westinghouse.
Right. And he'd been calling on this one chief engineer for, get this, 13 years.
13 years, with almost no sales. Ouch.
Yeah, talk about persistence. He finally gets a small order, just a few motors, hoping it's a breakthrough. But then he checks back in, and the engineer hits him with bad news.
What does he say?
Allison, I can't buy the remainder of the motors from you. Just like that.
Oh, no. And the reason?
Because your motors are too hot. I can't put my hand on them.
The classic product complaint. Easy place to start arguing.
For sure. But Allison knew arguing would just mean another 13 years of nothing. He realized he needed the yes, yes response.
So what did he do? How did he start?
He started by agreeing completely. Didn't push back at all. He said something like, well, now look, Mr. Smith, I said, I agree with you 100%. If those motors are running too hard, you ought not to buy any more of them.
Disarming.
Totally. Then he added, you must have motors that won't run any hotter than standards set by the National Electrical Manufacturers Association. Isn't that so?
Okay, bringing in an objective standard, NEMA. The engineer had to agree with that, surely.
Yep. First, yes. Then Allison gently pressed on. He asked if the NEMA standard allowed for a temperature rise of, I think it was 72 degrees Fahrenheit above room temperature.
Is that right?
The engineer confirmed, yes, that's quite correct. But your motors are much hotter. Still pushing back a bit.
But Allison didn't take the bait, right?
Yeah.
He didn't argue about his motors.
Nope. Stayed calm.
Huh.
He just asked, okay, what's the temperature in this room then? The engineer said about 75 degrees Fahrenheit.
Simple question.
Then Allison did the math out loud. Okay, 75 degrees room temp plus the allowed 72 degrees rise, that equals 147 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay.
Then he asked the engineer, hey, if you put your hand under water that was 147 degrees, would it scald you?
Well, yeah. Of course it would. Another yes.
Exactly. So now he's got this string of agreements. The motor shouldn't be too hot. NEMA standards are right. 147 degrees is the limit. 147 degrees would burn you.
So with all that groundwork laid,
Allison delivered the gentle conclusion. Well, I suggested, wouldn't it be a good idea to keep your hands off those motors?
Huh? Brilliant. Turning the complaint on its head using the engineer's own agreements.
And the engineer just sort of conceded, well, I guess you're right. His resistance just melted.
Amazing.
And the result, they chatted a bit more, got friendly, and the engineer ended up placing orders for about $35,000 worth of business.
From I can't buy to $35,000.
Yep. Allison's conclusion was crystal clear. Arguing doesn't pay. Looking at it from the other person's view and getting those yes, yes responses is far more profitable.
Yeah, it is. That's a powerful story. 13 years of frustration solved by changing the approach.
It really shows how agreeing with small, undeniable points can lead someone to accept a bigger conclusion they might have fought against if you just threw it at them.
Okay, one more quick one from the book Eddie Snow and the Bow Rental.
Oh, yeah, the hunting bow. So Eddie wants to rent a bow. First shop just says, nope, flat out. He calls another shop.
And the second shop
handled it like a pro. The guy on the phone didn't just say no. He was pleasant, first off. And he explained why they stopped renting. Basically, it wasn't financially viable anymore. Gave a reason.
Right. Empathy first.
Then he starts asking questions. Had Eddie rented before? Yes. Did he remember it costing around $25, $30? Yes, Eddie agreed. Did he like to save money?
Obviously, yes.
Another yes. So with those agreements stacked up, the guy smoothly transitions. He mentions they have these bow sets for sale, brand new, for only $34.95.
Which is only slightly more than the rental price Eddie just agreed to.
Exactly, just $4.95 more. Then he asks Eddie, hey, do you think that's reasonable?
Got Eddie's reaction.
As Eddie put it, did I think that was reasonable? My yes response was pretty much automatic at that point.
So he bought the set.
Bought the set, bought some other gear too, and became a loyal, regular customer. All because the interaction started with understanding and guiding him through yeses, not just shutting him down.
It turned a potential no into a long-term win. These examples are great, but it's interesting. This isn't just some, 20th century sales gimmick. Carnegie connects it way back.
Yeah, he brings in Socrates.
Right, one of the wisest thinkers ever.
He calls Socrates one of the world's wisest persuaders and points out that his whole method, the Socratic method, it was essentially built on this exact principle.
Getting yes, yes, yes responses.
That was his whole technique. He wouldn't tell people they were wrong. He was way more subtle.
How did it work again?
He just asked these questions his opponent couldn't really argue with, things they had to agree with.
Okay.
And he'd keep asking, snacking up one yes after another, one admission on top of the next. He built his case using the other person's own agreements.
Until eventually,
as Carnegie says, almost without realizing it, they found themselves accepting a conclusion they would have totally rejected just minutes before. They basically agreed their way into seeing his point.
That's incredible. It's a good reminder, isn't it?
Yeah.
Next time you feel that urge to jump in and say, you're wrong.
Pause. Remember Socrates.
Yeah, maybe just ask a gentle question instead. One designed to get that first little yes.
And Carnegie goes even further back. Historically, he brings in this ancient Chinese proverb.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
It reflects like 5,000 years of studying human nature, he says. The proverb is, he who treads softly goes far.
He who treads softly goes far. Wow. That perfectly captures this whole idea, doesn't it?
It really does, that gentle, non-confrontational approach. Guiding, not forcing.
It connects so well to the yes-yes technique.
It does. And so, just to kind of wrap up this core teaching from Carnegie, Principle 5 in this chapter is stated very simply, get the other person saying yes, yes, immediately.
So when we boil it all down, what we've really seen here is the power of starting with agreement, seeking those initial yeses.
Yeah, it seems to bypass our natural defenses, the ones that pop up when we feel disagreed with or confronted.
It creates this positive momentum, right? An open attitude.
Yeah.
Makes the other person more receptive.
And not because you strong-armed them, but because you gently guided them through these small agreements they already held.
It sounds so simple. Maybe too simple sometimes.
I know, but those examples, the bank, the sales call, the bow shop, even going back to Socrates, they show how powerful it can be in shifting how conversations go.
It's really about stepping into their shoes first, finding that patch of common ground, and building out from there.
Exactly.
And you can totally see how this applies, well, everywhere. Business, obviously, like in the examples.
Sure.
But also with friends, family, maybe even trying to convince your kids about something.
Yeah.
Anywhere, you need agreement.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? How often do we just automatically lead with the difference, the disagreement?
And trigger that resistance without even meaning to.
Yeah.
So maybe here's something for you, the listener, to think about. Consider a recent conversation that felt tricky, or maybe one where you felt like you were just hitting a wall. Could approaching it differently have helped? Could starting by consciously looking for some shared ground, asking a question designed to get an easy yes, have changed the whole feel of it?
It's a fascinating thought. What tiny shift could you make, maybe in your very next conversation, just to invite that first yes response?
And maybe, just maybe, avoid triggering that automatic bracing no, something to ponder.